Hi everybody, we are going to start in just a couple of minutes. I don't know if you noticed the poll over there on the right of the screen. If you would like to participate in the poll, feel free. I have a couple of other polls set up that we're going to try. I just thought that would be a fun way to interact. So feel free to participate in the poll. I hope everybody can hear me okay. If I'm not speaking loud enough in the chat, please, raise your hand or just say something like, "We can't hear you." And then I just want to mention that you make sure to type your name into the chat box if you're using this session for recertification. I'm going to wait until about 5 or 10 minutes after 4 before I I have to send the list of everybody who is in chat to Glenda so she can get attendance that you attended the session. So it's important that you put your name in there. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome all of you to the Paraeducator session today. I was just kind of given this topic to reach out to you with. So what I'm planning to do today is talk to you about using social media with your students in the classroom, using technology with your students in the classroom, but also kind of how it affects your personal life and actually the long-term life of both you and your students and teachers as well. So we're going to talk about technology in the classroom. We're going to talk about social media. We're also going to talk about cyberbullying, what it is, what are some things that you can do, and we're going to talk about sexting, because sexting is also kind of taking on a life of its own with our students in schools. So has everybody participated in this poll? I just kind of set this poll up here on the right just to get started. I'm going to switch to another poll in a second, and then I'm going to start the presentation. So I'm going to select a new poll, and if you would want to go ahead and vote on that poll, the question is, how many of you have a Facebook account? Yes or no? And I see a couple people just came into the room here in Elkader. I'm going to, do you have your laptops? Do you have the link to get in? Oh, you have your iPad. So just make sure that in the chat you put your names in if you're taking this session for credit.
The link is right on the site.
It should be. Are you both taking the session for recertification credit? If you want to just tell me your names, I can put it in.
Sue Breitstecker.
Okay. So Sue, and you want to spell that?
Breitstesker. P-R-E-C-H-E-R.
Okay, and,
Pat Klingman, nice.
okay, yeah. Pat Klingman. Okay, folks, I think we're going to get started.
Yeah, so you'd have to.
So, are you voting about, are you voting on, I know you're in groups, but Facebook, how many of you have a Facebook account? I'm going to share my screen now and go to website. And the first thing I just want to mention is at the Keystone site, under the Paraeducators Classes for Paras, my understanding was that you would have liked to have any handouts published 2 weeks prior. I apologize for that. If I had had a chance to plan this session 2 weeks prior, that would have been fantastic, but you know how crazy everyone's schedules are. So I'm just going to point out the resources that I have listed here. The first one is just a link to another Keystone website that I've created, and if I click on that, I'm just going to go up here to the top and show you what that is. It's just a link to the Digital Citizenship and Cyberbullying website that I've created that has lots of resources on there for teachers and students in grade 12 through kindergarten. So there are a lot of resources to come back here and use. The next one that I have on that list is actually also listed right here, and it's my Bullying and Digital Citizenship Pinterest board. I have more resources than you could get through in a year. And there's some really good ones on here. I refer back to it myself a lot. But there are lots of resources here as well if you're looking for additional resources. So that's the second link on the Keystone, on the Paraeducation site. The next one is something that I know more and more of our schools are going to one-to-one in some form or another. And this particular site has tips for classroom management. And you know, it says with laptops, but those 20 tips for classroom management, it could be with any device. And a couple of tips for dealing with students when all of them have a device or a laptop in their hand are, you know, think about the room arrangement. So I'm going to point out number 2. Arrange the classroom so that you can see what's on the screens. And then I'm going to go back to number 1. Make sure kids understand what the expectations are and what's going to happen if they cross those boundaries. And that if they do, they lose the privilege and everybody else knows about it so that they learn from each other. The next one I'm going to point out is you have to be on your toes. As a teacher or a para in a one-to-one classroom, you can't sit at your desk. You have to be up, moving around, and looking, checking screens, and see what kids are up to. And then I'm going to also point out tip number 4 is set limits. You know, tell students these are the resources I want you to use. These may be ones that that are off limits for today. So I'm going to mention those, and then I'm going to go to the second page. A couple of things I want to mention is, as a para helping a teacher with technology, every now and then it's a good idea to stop and reflect what didn't work and why, and what did work and why. And then that helps you to move forward so that next year when that same unit rolls around and that teacher is thinking about how they're going to use a resource, you know, if you had a few minutes to stop and reflect, you can say, well, remember you did that last year and this worked really well or that didn't work so well. So that's an important thing to do as well. And then don't forget, you can tell kids, put the device away, we have other stuff to do. Just because it's a one-to-one classroom doesn't mean they have to be using that device every single entire minute of the day. It's okay to use the device when it works for the class, when it works for the assignment, but it's okay to also put it away when there's another activity that kids are required to do. So I just thought this was a really good handout, and I hope you find it useful. And then I'm going to mention one more handout, and that is a poster, 5 Steps to Internet Safety. And if you attended in class or in person today here at Keystone, you got to have one of those printed just for you. If not, you can. This is just a PDF, and you can download it and print it to post in your own classroom. So those are the handouts. And again, I apologize that I didn't get them up there sooner, but they are there now. So feel free to grab those and use them however you'd like to. And then I'm going to get into my presentation for today. Just give me a sec.
Back to your internet safety thing. You tried
Oh, question.
downloading that today?
The internet safety, the 5 steps to internet safety. Okay, so somebody in the room here just mentioned, Pat just mentioned that they tried to download the internet safety handout today and it didn't download. I have a bunch of them printed. If you email me, I will put them in an envelope and send it out to you in the van if you'd like one to post in a classroom or if you'd like a couple for your school. And again, I'll tell you my email address real quickly. DHENKES@aea1.k12.ia.us. So yeah, if you send me an email, I would be glad to put a couple. Tell me if you know if you want more than a few. Let me know how many you want. I'll put those in an envelope and send them out on the van. Sorry that you were unable to download those. Okay, so this presentation is one that I've used a couple of times before, and I've kind of personalized it just for today. And the very first thing that I'm going to show you is a little video. And I'm not sure how the sound is working on your side, but mainly it's just about technology use. Well, I hope that didn't look too badly on your side. I see one of the questions is, can you remove the poll? In order to remove the poll, I have to stop the presentation for a minute. So just give me a second and I will remove that poll out of the way. And while I'm doing that, what I would like you to do, even if the sound was kind of in and out, could you see enough of the video to have a conversation on your side about one thing that surprised you? And Al McKee, is the sound distorted when I'm speaking or just when the video is playing? So have a conversation at your site with whoever is there. One thing that you saw that surprised you. I see that Deb said people name their kids Facebook. No, everybody's on Facebook anymore. My mother-in-law went to a new service provider, got a new email address, and until she got her new laptop and Facebook hooked up, she just about drove me crazy. So, they say that, and I have some data to back this up, that kids, used to be that I would do an internet safety session at a school, and half of the third graders would be on Facebook telling me that they're trying to be friends with seniors, and didn't understand why the seniors didn't want to be their friends. But now there's a little video. Facebook is not so much for kids. It's really the older generation that's really getting involved. And Al McKee, are you able to hear? Is it my voice or is it the video? Could you post something on chat and let me know? So unless I hear more comments from you that my sound is bad, I'm going to keep going. And what we're going to talk about today are just aspects of technology and how it's being used and ways to protect your reputation, digital citizenship, social media, ways to keep yourself safe and your students, and what to do in certain situations. And the things that I tell teachers when I do an internet safety or a social media session is the same things that we tell students. Those are the same things that teachers and parents and everybody who works with kids should also keep in mind, should also model to the students. For example, guarding your privacy. It's important to tell students to keep some things need to be private. Determine what should be out there for everybody to see and what kind of information should not be shared, such as phone numbers, addresses, things like that. As adults, we need to keep some of those same things in mind. We need to also set limits for our own privacy and protect our reputation. So one of the new vocab words for today is revenge porn. Revenge porn has been happening where people post too much on Facebook and then on their Facebook accounts, or they share too many photos with their significant other, who then becomes either their ex-boyfriend or their ex-husband, and then is mad about the situation and starts sharing all those digital images that they had on their phone or on Facebook with everybody in the world. Once that stuff is out there, it's really, really, really hard to get off. So when you're working with students or even thinking about your own life, remember to guard your privacy, protect your reputation. Just think that nothing digital is private. Now, just assume that everything you put out there, somebody could get into. And it's very true, somebody could get into it. However, you do have some expectations of privacy when you're using something like online banking, when you're going to Amazon to order something. I mean, you have some expectation, but you remember what happened with Target. the target data breach right around Christmas. You have to have a backup plan. You have to be careful. You have to make sure when you're buying things that you're in a secure site and so on. And then the next one is so important. Kids don't know it. A lot of adults don't know it. Follow the golden rule when you're online. When you're commenting on on other Facebook sites, or when you're commenting just anywhere on any site, if you wouldn't want somebody to say that to you, then don't say it to someone else. Kids don't know how to comment appropriately. A lot of adults don't know how to comment appropriately. You probably have seen in the past the Decoral Eagle Cam, right? The Decoral Eagle Cam had to turn off comments because people were not commenting appropriately. Come on, people. We need to learn what is appropriate and how to comment. We need to help our students understand that, and we need to model it to our students. When you're at a site and you have the student sitting next to you, it's easy to say, you know what, we're going to post a comment here, or whatever the activity is that you're doing. And it's important for you as an adult to model students saying, every time I post something, I think about what somebody else might think when I say that. Maybe they won't understand what I'm saying, so it's so important to watch what I post and to try to post appropriate things. And then the next thing that I say, both to teachers and students and parents, adults and kids, watch the clock. Pinterest? How much fun? Did you see in the video that 97% of people on Pinterest are women? So when you're on Pinterest, set a timer. Too much screen time. I love technology, but enough is enough. Too much screen time, and it's time to, move on to something else. Same with kids. Too much screen time playing games. They have other things to do. It's important to get outside, to get exercise. Think about sitting at the dinner table with mom and her maybe the mom has her smartphone and dad's checking his smartphone to see, what emails he's getting from work, and the kids have an iPad, and everybody's sitting there with their device. It's time to have face-to-face conversation as well as digital conversation. And the next thing that I say to kids and teachers is choose wisely. Look at the sites you're at. Is this appropriate for you? And kids know when something is inappropriate. The next one is don't hide. If you are creating a username, just expect that there is a way that everyone knows who that is. So don't think you can create an anonymous username and then go out and do mean things to other people. Now, the next two that I'm going to mention, the first one is it true? Just because somebody put it on a website doesn't make it accurate or true. It's important to check sources, to use your brain, to think about what you're seeing, to look at some other sites and compare. So just because you saw something on the internet, that doesn't mean that it's actually something that's really happening. The next one, be smart and be safe. And I'm going to share more tips with you as we go throughout the day.
Alan McKee is asking me if you're too close to the mic. I don't think that's the problem.
Am I too loud now? Sorry. Is this better? Al McKee? Hopefully let me know if this is any better. I kind of moved back a little bit. First I thought maybe you couldn't hear me, so let me know. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Facebook. We're going to talk about Twitter. We're going to talk about Instagram, Snapchat. We're going to talk about bullying, and we're going to get into sexting. And the first thing we're going to talk about is Facebook. I saw that the majority of you did have a Facebook account, and you know what? Facebook is great. I'm just going to put this out there before we go any farther, and I'm just going to say, first of all, social media has changed the world we live in, whether we like it or not. Life is different because of social media. And secondly, social media doesn't promote bad behavior. It only reveals bad behavior. This kind of thing that may be inappropriate that you see on Facebook was happening before Facebook. It's just that now that we have Facebook, everybody can share it with the entire world. So just keep those two things in mind. Great ways to use Facebook with students. Many students do have a Facebook account. It's a great way to connect to them. You can provide resources. You can, if students are gone from school, it's a great way to keep them in the loop. It's a good way to promote good use of digital citizenship through having a teacher have a Facebook account and for the class, and then keeping kids involved and helping them understand what is appropriate and what isn't. You can use Facebook's groups and pages features to collaborate. It's a great way to connect with parents or use as a PLN. Remember, as a teacher, as a para, as a student, to take a look at those account settings. You know, every now and then Facebook changes their account settings. Sorry, I'm just taking a look at Al McKee's comment about it's still muffled and echoey. If you have more than one laptop or device in your room where you're listening to this or taking part in this webinar, make sure that only one has sound open and the other ones are muted. That's where some of the echoing or feedback might be coming from. Maybe that's not the issue, but it could be. So make sure that one device has the volume up all the way so everybody can hear, and then mute the others. Hopefully that will help. Sorry. Is anyone else having that issue? Okay, back to Facebook. Boundaries as an educator. Okay, before I go over the boundaries, I'm going to tell you a little story. Last fall, it was probably in August, I was out to eat at a restaurant in the area, and there was a table right behind me of several older ladies. So we were kind of packed in there, so of course I could hear everything that they were saying. And one of the things that they were talking about was a teacher at a local school had posted on her Facebook page about her new class. She said, oh, you know, the first day of classes at this school, and got my new students, and this one, she named a student's name. I'm going to call him Johnny. She said, Johnny's going to be a real pistol. You know, now the ladies they said, oh, did you see this teacher's Facebook page? And they said, oh yeah, we know Johnny, and yeah, he is going to be a pistol, and so on. But what do you think? Okay, so let me just throw that out there. What do you think about that? Is that appropriate as a teacher or as a para to post information about your students, about what's happening in the school like that? Have a 1-minute conversation. You know, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it is not. That was put across to us very clearly this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did something happen?
Yeah, something did happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it wasn't done intentionally. It was done with the best.
And it was actually a comment, and the student was a special needs student. Mm-hmm. And it pretty much stated that that child had a para working with them. You know, it was just wrong.
The question is, can we get this info? Is it in a handout? The first link that I gave you that I posted on the Para Educator site is a link to the Keystone Bullying and Digital Citizenship page. This presentation is embedded in that page. So if you go there, right at near the top, you're going to see this presentation, and all you have to do is click on the links, and you'll be able to go right through it and see all of the information that you're looking at right now. So that's for Robin. I mean, you can write notes, but just remember, you can go back to that page, and everything is there. And I will show you again at the end exactly where to find that. Okay, so I hope you're having some great conversation. We had a little conversation here with the folks that are in the room, and I'm just going to mention that posting information about what you're doing at school, as long as you keep it very positive and you're not identifying students or targeting any kind of students, can be a really good thing, but you have to be really careful. It's a good way to lose your job. Let me give you a couple of examples here. This was a veteran teacher who very publicly, she had a blog. She was a mentor to another teacher, a young teacher who just got started, and she blogged about her colleagues, about how annoying they were. She blogged about students. She blogged about this mentee that she was supposed to be the mentor for, and the mentee went to the principal, and they ended up firing this teacher because of her speech. And I just want you to know that as an employee, as a public employee, your speech is protected only if it touches on matter of public concern without disrupting co-workers' relations or interfering with the performance of your duties. So if you're putting information out there that's about students, especially some of the students that you're working with that have IEPs, that have very confidential information, you have to be very careful about what you're saying. As long as you're keeping it very positive, if it were me, I just wouldn't go there at all. So just keep that in mind. And I'm going to mention, so what if you post something that's not even school related? So here's an example. This was a Pennsylvania teacher who was suspended because of a Facebook photo of her with a male stripper at a bachelorette party. Now I know you guys would never do that, but she did not even post the picture. She was fully clothed. Someone else posted it and tagged her. And what happened was one of the school board members saw it. So she was put on temporary leave while they went over the case. She took them to court. She was eventually reinstated, and they paid a settlement to the teacher. But think about her court costs, the hassle going through all that, how her reputation suffered, and that was she didn't even post the photo. So as educators, we need to talk to our friends and say, you know what, if we went to Vegas and you took a bunch of photos of me, and you post them on Facebook, don't tag me in any of those photos. So you want to make sure you tell your friends those kinds of things too. Now, boundaries. Do not accept students as friends unless they've been out of school like 20 years. Then they can be your friends. Whatever screen name you use, you know it can be traced. Think about what your friends are posting on Facebook and what that says about you. Don't post about your job, colleagues, or students. I would just say don't do that. Stay away from too personal information. Don't post those photographs that you think could be a joke if it's considered in any way inappropriate. And be careful of the causes you join, because that's all public and it creates an image of you. So just going to mention, those are my suggestions. There are alternatives to Facebook for schools, and I'm sure, as parents, you're probably not making the choices on what tools to use, but here are suggestions that teachers could use. Facebook, Edmodo is very, many of you are probably familiar with Edmodo. It's very similar to Facebook, but used as an educational tool. So there's Schoology is very similar, Moodle, Google Docs, great alternatives to using Facebook in the classroom. And I know that many schools have Facebook blocked, and I understand because there would be some students who would be on there nonstop. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. Now let's go on to Twitter. Okay, so that was, that little clip was kind of a joke that there was an earthquake and the guy got the cell phone text from Twitter. He checked Twitter and he knew that it was coming before it got there, but that is actually reality. Twitter is actually faster than earthquakes. That particular video was a reference to an earthquake out east about a year or two ago, and before the earthquake got to New York City and other areas, they barely felt it, but the tweets were out there before it even got there. So Twitter is a fabulous tool that many, many students are beginning to use in conjunction with Facebook, but many of them, rather than Facebook, they're tweeting to their friends, they're tweeting to anybody out there. So why use Twitter? There are a lot of really good things about Twitter. So before I go into Twitter and some of these other ones, I want you to think about ice cream. Do you like ice cream? Is ice cream a good thing? So there are lots of different varieties. It tastes really good. Can ice cream be a bad thing? You eat it too fast, you get a headache, you eat too much, you gain weight, and so on. Technology is kind of like that. It's a good thing as long as you think about how you're using it and the choices that you're making when you use technology. It's a bad thing if you overdo it, or you do too much, or you put those things out there that are inappropriate. And that's when I talk to kids about using technology, I kind of use that ice cream analogy, kind of makes sense to them. So, and the same with Twitter. Twitter is a great tool. It's a great way to engage students. It's a good way, teachers and parents, to be aware of kids of what they're doing out there. It's a great way to find out what's happening at school if your school has a hashtag. It's a good way to find resources through Twitter. Students are using it. They can help you get started with it. If you don't know how to get started with it, it's a great way to keep up to date with classes. And it's a great way to promote technology positively and promote your school. For example, the Clayton Ridge School created a hashtag, and I know other schools have hashtags as well. Central, Howard Winn, a lot of schools have hashtags, and then that's how they promote some of the great things that are happening at their school, or also let people know if school's going to be delayed or early outs, things like that. So those are some really good things about Twitter. And one thing, if you know anything about Twitter, it's kind of its own language. You know, so these are a couple of what a follow means, or what a mention means, or what a retweet, can't even say it, retweet looks like, or hashtag. You know, you see all those commercials on TV about hashtags. Hashtags are just mainly a way of narrowing down a search in Twitter. And then there's direct messages, and then there's all those URL shorteners. So think about, there are a lot of ways you can use it with students, to give feedback, to create historical character tweets, to use as a polling or question thought tool. A lot of ways to do it. And again, it's important to check those privacy settings in Twitter. Who can see what you're tweeting? Who are you following? Who's following you? Your username is what? Is that appropriate? What profile photo do you have in there? What do you talk about again at work? What are you tweeting about the students that you work with? So all those things are important to keep in mind, whether you're a teacher, student, or para. And then boundaries. If you are tweeting to students, always include the principal. Use the @ sign and put that principal's name in. If you are using Twitter to inform or invite parents, ask your principal to follow you. I don't know about direct messaging with students unless they've been out of school for 20 years. Remember to keep what's public, and private separate. And Google yourself. See what's out there about you. And we'll get to a little bit more about that in a little bit. There are some great Twitter alternatives as well. Today's Me, Padlet, It's Creative, and more. Instagram and Snapchat. Now, I don't know how much you know, and Ask FM. I think these are the three that have been causing mega headaches in schools lately with kids. Kids are not on Facebook, but they're on Instagram. They may not be using Facebook, but they're all using Snapchat, and they can tell you about it. And then Ask FM is a whole other story. So Instagram. Instagram is a site where basically all it is it's kind of like a big blog. It's like Twitter, except instead of posting text, it's a photo. And there are a lot of ways, a lot of kids are using it. Kids know how it works. You know, you take all those cute pictures of your cat and your puppy, great. It's just kids need to think about what kind of photos they're posting and what it says about them. Snapchat is an app. It's not not really a website, it's an app. The way it works is you set it up so that it's a photo sharing app. So you set it up so that the photo disappears after 3 to 10 seconds. So kids think, oh, I can take this photo, I'll send it to my boyfriend, and it's going to disappear in 3 seconds, so he won't have a permanent record of that. The only thing is, is that kids know how to take a screenshot, So rather than before it disappears, they take a quick screenshot, they share it with everybody in the world, or there are companies out there that specialize in getting Snapchat photos back. So the deal with Snapchat is kids think that that it's going to disappear, but it doesn't really. Nothing digital ever really disappears. And I don't know if you've heard about Ask FM, but that's one of the sites that I've been getting a lot of questions about. It's a site where kids go and they create an account, and then they ask a question, or people ask them a question. The thing is, everybody's anonymous. Nobody really knows for sure who everybody is. And because of that, they think they can ask all kinds of things that you would never say to somebody in person, or say, as a response to a question, all kinds of things that you would never say to anybody in person. Yes, question?
Hashtag.
Oh, I see. Sorry. I have the people here kind of keeping me on task with the hashtag thing, or with in the chat window to make sure that I share that. The hashtag is the number symbol. You know, if you're going to put a phone number, instead of writing out the word number, you put that symbol with the lines. The way it works in Twitter, all it is, it's a way to sort out chats. So for example, if I put in hashtag Keystone AEA, anybody that sent a tweet that included in that tweet, in that Twitter message, hashtag Keystone AEA, it would sort them out from all the other tweets out there and provide one list with anything that has that hashtag. So it's mainly just a way to sort messages. So if, for example, Central here in Alcater, Central School, I'm not sure what their hashtag is, but maybe it's Central School. If they put in hashtag Central School or somebody searched that, it would sort everything else away and only it would allow you to only find the tweets that have that hashtag in the list. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so how are we doing out there? Instagram and Snapchat. And it's, you know, when you think about Ask FM or Snapchat, it's like ice cream. It's good. Depends on the choices you make when you get the ice cream. Same, you know, it's the same thing with the tools. Yeah, so does that make sense to everybody? If kids are talking about Snapchat or Ask FM, now you kind of have a little bit of a clue. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so bullying. Let's spend some time on bullying. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I have a poll question that I either want you to respond to or talk about in your session. So you just have to give me a minute to get that up. And the question is, so I'm going to bring this down a little bit so you can see it. The question is, how do students at your school report a bullying incident? What do they do? So have that conversation at your table. Do you know if a student comes to you and says, "Oh, this kid is doing this to me," what would you do? And how do students at your school, how do you report?
Yeah, I do. I have heard that from a parent this year. Says they think their child is.
And if a child says to you, or a parent, what do you do?
Much for that. We do discuss it with students, though, like you can tell us if you think that is happening. You tell a teacher first.
So I'm not sure why, on your side, do you get a text box so that you can post a question for this poll? I don't know why that's not showing up. Are you guys seeing that? Has anybody seen? Can you touch in the space? But can you, is there any way you can put in a response? Yeah, I don't know why that's not showing up right. So maybe I'll make it a yes or no question. Let's see if I can edit the poll. Okay, so I'm going to make it a multiple choice, and then it's going to be yes, no, not sure. Okay, now you can you vote?
No.
You don't see anything?
We see it, but you can't.
It won't let you do anything? Gosh, I'm sorry.
Little pointer is stuck.
Oh, one person voted not sure. So maybe some people are. Can you touch on one of those little radial dots? 2 people said not sure.
Oh, we can.
Yep, a couple of you are voting. So good. It sounds like 60% of you do know how to report, and that is a really important thing. It's part of the responsibility of your school that all employees know how to report a bullying incident and help students report. There's been a lot of information, I'm sure you've seen in the news, about bullying the last couple of years, and this, in the state of Iowa, Governor Branstad has started a task force about bullying. I'm going to share with you in just a few minutes the definition of bullying according to the state of Iowa and talk about what it is. But I'm just going to give you maybe a couple more minutes if you can vote.
You have a comment that says they have a place to report that on their website.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yep. I see that Deb Thomas says there's a place to report on the website. That's fantastic. And not only should the reporting be easily available, but it should also be anonymous. That should be part of it, because sometimes kids are intimidated and think they can't report something if they think they're going to be targeted. Now also, before I forget, I have to email this chat history to Glenda so that you all get credit for today. So I did that before I forgot. So I see someone is typing a message. How can a website be anonymous? What I'm talking about is a way for students to report. One of the tools that we created for schools to use is a Google form that students can use to report a bullying incident, either that they viewed or that they are involved in, as either the target or, several other people are bullying them. And in the Google form, they have the choice of either putting their name in if they want someone to contact them, or just putting in enough information so that the guidance counselor or whoever the school decides the form should go to can go and talk to the bully about the incident without the student's name being published. And I can tell you there are reasons for that. And one of the things that's so important when working with kids, if a kid comes up to you and says, oh, Johnny's doing this, Johnny's bullying me, is not to share the name of that student if you go talk to Johnny and say, hey, Tommy says you're bullying him. Well, then as soon as you're gone, what's going to happen is Johnny is going to go over and beat up Tommy again. So it's really important to keep that victim or target anonymous so that other people don't know who made the accusation. However, it's important to follow up and determine whether it is an accurate observation, make sure it's an authentic thing, that one kid isn't just trying to get another kid in trouble. Okay, so I think everybody's had the chance to vote if they want to. I'm going to get rid of this poll and go back to the presentation. Yeah, so it sounds that most of you know how to report. If you don't, maybe talk to your principal, maybe talk to the teachers that you work with, ask them what is the procedure for reporting an incident, because it's important. All Iowa employees, all Iowa school employees are supposed to know what that procedure is. Okay, so what exactly is bullying and harassment? Now this information is directly from Iowa Code. It's directly from the law, so I'm going to just kind of read it. It's from that Iowa Code 28028. Harassment and bullying shall be construed to mean any electronic, written, verbal, or physical act conducted toward a student which is based on any actual or perceived trait or characteristic of the student which creates an objectively hostile school environment. So that's the law. What does that actually mean? What that means is, so an actual physical or perceived trait. So a physical act would be, Johnny says to Tommy, I'm going to beat you up on the way to basketball today. It would be a physical or a threat of a physical act. A perceived trait may be Johnny saying to Tommy, you're gay. And whether he is or not, that is that's seen as being harassing or continuing to harass a student. Even if the student doesn't, some students don't realize that they're the bully until it's called to their attention. So that's one of the issues as well. And as a perceived trait, maybe a kid is thinking that somebody's harassing them all the time, and all it takes is for the guidance counselor to talk to the student about their behavior around other students. Maybe they are making themselves a target, as well as talking to the students who are harassing the kids. So whatever it happens, it's important to not ignore it. It used to be, especially with cyberbullying, that schools would say, well, it happened at home, it didn't happen at school, and a lot of times that's what does happen. It happened at home, it didn't happen at school, so we can't do anything about it. But I can tell you that educators must understand that they can be held personally liable for ignoring or taking part in bullying behavior. Even if something happens outside of school, a lot of times what happens is that the kids get together in school and then comments are thrown, things happen, even though the actual incident took place out of school. So what are the characteristics, or what creates an objectively hostile environment in the school? There are four rules to look at when thinking about, is this an incident of harassment and bullying? The first one, is it a clear-cut threat? For example, Johnny saying to Tommy, I'm going to beat you up on the way to basketball practice. The second one, is it clearly disruptive of school discipline? Say you're in the lunchroom and all of a sudden these kids start yelling at each other and you're not sure what's going on. You go over there and I'm going back to Johnny and Tommy. Johnny says, Tommy posted this on Facebook about me last night. So kids are yelling at each other, there's starting to be a fight. So it clearly disrupts school discipline. The incident cannot be the principal saying to the kids, Johnny, you're doing something inappropriate, I heard that you were posting this on Facebook, and the principal starting the disruption. It has to be between the students. The third rule, the student creates something in school, or it's a school project that is inappropriate, or they create a website that's not appropriate for school, using school technology, such as a one-to-one laptop or iPad, or they go to a site that's inappropriate. So the student uses technology in the school, or a teacher. Teachers can lose their job for doing the same thing, accessing porn with your school laptop that you took home. Not that I'm saying anybody does that, but I would hope they don't do that, but you can lose your job because of that. The fourth rule that is looked at when determining if something is a bullying issue is, does it have proof of impact? For example, since this started, are Tommy's grades going down as a result of this harassment? Is it interfering with activities? For example, is Tommy now afraid to go to basketball because he got a text from Johnny saying, I'm going to beat you up? Is a student, is the are their academics going down? Is there a problem with that? Does it interfere with school activities? Are there impacts of health? So maybe Susie keeps getting these text messages from a group of girls saying she's dumb, she's fat, and she's ugly, and so as a result, Susie starts maybe making herself throw up to lose weight or other things, and it's changing her health. It's a detrimental effect on her health. So those are the four rules. It's a clear-cut threat, clearly disruptive of school discipline, student accesses the project or whatever with school equipment or on school grounds, and proof of impact, whether it's academic, health-wise, or interferes with activities. Okay, so cyberbullying. So that's bullying in general as well as cyberbullying. I think what makes cyberbullying so insidious is that there's such a huge potential for it to be anonymous, and you don't know for sure who's doing it, or kids can hide behind a screen name. Of course, those can all be traced in one way or another, but they think they can get away with stuff that they would never do face-to-face because they think they're anonymous. And the other one is, once something is posted, it's out there for the whole world. Maybe a kid puts up a picture of themselves that's inappropriate, or they make some comment that's inappropriate. In a second, somebody can take a screenshot of that and send it to 500 other friends. You know, it used to be that we maybe passed notes in class, we did things, talked about our friends, and nobody heard it but the people next to you. Now the potential is for the whole world for it to see, for it to go viral. I'm sure you've heard of that before, and I think that's what really makes cyberbullying more of an issue than traditional bullying. Plus, with all of our devices, it used to be, Johnny beats me up on the playground. I go home, I'm away from him. Now, Johnny's sending me threatening text on my cell phone. I have my cell phone in my hand basically 24 hours a day. It follows me everywhere I go. And, that's what makes it so insidious. So, as educators, what can we do? Some of the first things that we can do is pay attention. Don't ignore it. If a student comes up to you, it is your responsibility to follow through, to do something about it. Keep an eye on what's happening with kids. You know how kids, you get to know them well enough to where you know something is up? If something is up, ask them. Say, hey, what's going on? Is there anything I can do to help? Tell me about it. So pay attention to what's going on. Don't ignore it. If you see something, even if it's something in the hall where Tommy walks up to Johnny and shoves him and said, hey, fag, get out of the way, you need to do something about that. You can't just let that pass. Now, let me talk about you being on Facebook, and maybe you have kids who have friends who go to the same school, and you end up seeing something on your kids' Facebook site because one of their friends posted it. If you see something, you kind of have to do something about it. You have to say something to the principal. You have to talk to the guidance counselor. Say something. Talk to the teacher the class that student is in. Stay calm. Kids are not going to tell you what's going on if you freak out. Stay calm. Talk to the student about what they heard. Help them deal with it by either making a printed copy of the harassment, or find someone who can help them. But if you get really upset about it, they don't want you to end up taking that device away. They love their devices. They just don't know how to deal with the issues that they have. And deal with the students individually. So you see 3 kids in a group, they're all around a cell phone, and they're all laughing and giggling, and you glance at the cell phone and you know it's something inappropriate. Rather than try and deal with it with all of them together, pull them apart, and find out what's going on. And hold bystanders accountable. If you see kids who are just standing there laughing while someone else is pushing a kid around, they're responsible too. They could have said something. They could have helped. When a student comes up to you, listen to what they have to say before jumping to conclusions. Let them just say what they're going to say, and be a good listener, and then determine what the next steps are to help someone, and get them appropriate help. If it's an issue that you don't know what to do, go to the tech person at your school, or get the principal involved, or get the classroom teacher involved. Get the appropriate help that can deal with this. Just say to the students, I don't know what to do, but I know I can find somebody to help you. And again, every time you use technology, even if you think, I will never use this ever, you are always learning about how technology works. So that later when something comes up, you'll say, oh, I know a little bit about that. You never know when you're learning something that's going to be useful later on. And I say that especially in my case. When I'm out at your school doing a technology training and you think, oh, I'll never use this. What I want to say is you never know what you don't know, and you never know when you might need something. Every time you use technology, you learn a little more about it. So that's just on my soapbox. I'll get off that now. The very last thing that I want to say, as parents, as friends to the kids in your neighborhood, as teachers, in whatever role you are, be approachable to kids so that kids feel comfortable, that they can come up to you and say, I'm having an issue with this, can you help me? I think that's, as adults, we all need to be approachable for kids to do that. So at your table, just have a little bit of a conversation about what you can do, what you've seen so far. We'll take a minute for that.
Yeah, we're elementary. We're really having kindergarten. So, yeah, we don't see that, but we do see bullying.
Yeah. And you need to be approachable too, no matter what.
Give them a minute.
Take a minute to breathe.
I don't know what. There are 200 people. A little bit of the conversation here was, if you're a lower elementary, kindergarten, pre-K, you may not see a lot of cyberbullying, but you may see bullying. I can tell you that most kids, cyberbullying starts around age 9 or 10. As soon as they get comfortable with technology, they start to cyberbully. And I'm sure you've seen bullying. The same things apply, whether it's face-to-face bullying or online. It's some of the same stuff. So I think I'm going to move on. It's 5 o'clock. I hope you're not too exhausted. I know it's been a long day that you've already been at school, but I'm just going to keep moving on here. If you have any comments, anything you want me to talk more about, please put it in the chat. I'm trying to keep an eye on that as well. So, what you can do with students for internet safety. So you have a student who comes up to you and they tell you that there's an issue. And this is, I got these 5 things from that poster that I posted as one of the links. And again, if it won't download for you, let me know and I can send you that to post in your room or give to teachers. The first thing is if kids are having an issue, stop what they're doing, especially that Ask FM. I have a lot of kids or schools who tell me, well, the kids in there, they're being bullied, but they don't stop going there. They keep going back. So one of the things to do is don't keep clicking, don't keep going back. Don't put yourself out there. Stop. The next one is you would need to take a screenshot or save the evidence. You cannot just go, if it's serious harassment, You can't just go to the police and say, oh, this kid is harassing me. You need to have something to back it up. You need to have evidence. Take screenshots. If you're using your cell phone, you can email a text to your email address. And, you know, you can save it and print it out that way. So you need to save a copy and print it out so you have it available. If you are being harassed, one of the first things to do is also block or remove them as a friend, remove them from your friends list. You know, don't keep yourself open for that. And tell someone. Tell your teacher. Tell the network administrator, the tech person at your school. When you have a problem, if you do not say anything about it, nobody can help you. So it's important that kids know that they can tell somebody, and we will help do whatever we can to make it stop. And that's the last one. Share what's happening. Tell somebody, tell your friends. Tell people what to do in order to make things stop. So that those 5 steps, that is one of the handouts. And like I said, if you can't get that poster to open, let me know. I'll send some on the van. Now, one of the best ways we can help kids be safe when using technology, be safe from bullying and cyberbullying, is help them understand that passwords are like underwear. You know, starting in 1st, 2nd grade, even kindergarten, kids start logging into various sites with usernames and passwords. And if we help them understand how to keep their passwords safe, that's going to save a lot of bullying in the long run. I can't tell you how many stories I have heard from students, from parents, from teachers, where a student shared a password with their friend, and then the friends get mad at each other, and things happen. For example, let me just tell you a quick story. I had a teacher told me this one. It was her daughter was in, when she was in 6th grade, she had a best friend, and she shared her password with the friend. And then by the time they're in 8th grade, you know how things change. The friend wasn't a friend so much anymore. And what the friend started doing, because she knew her username and password for her email account, she went in and she started sending these suggestive messages to high school boys in her with her friend's email account. And the mom, who was a teacher, thought, well, I'll just call this girl's mom and we'll talk about it. And, you know, maybe the mom doesn't even know what's going on. So she called the mom. And the mom said, oh, I know, my daughter's told me we've had so much fun writing these messages. I mean, so you cannot think that parents necessarily know what is appropriate any more than kids do. So like I said, one of the best ways to protect yourself, to help kids protect themselves, is understanding about passwords. So how are passwords like underwear? Well, you don't want your students to share their underwear with their friends, and usually they don't, is my understanding, so don't share passwords with friends. We usually don't leave our underwear lying around the classroom, so don't leave your passwords lying out where anybody can find them. We've had quite a winter, and in a winter like this, the longer your underwear is, the better. It's kind of the same with passwords, the longer the better. And I know how hard it is to remember passwords. But if they're a little bit longer, and anymore, a lot of sites require you to they have to be at least 8 characters long. But if you make them a little bit longer, include like a number or an exclamation mark or something in there, that makes them that much harder for someone else to remember them or to use them. And just like underwear, we need to change them, hopefully, underwear every night, not passwords every night, but occasionally. So these are just, share this with your students. Even in kindergarten, they can, they have an understanding of this. It's a good way to help them remember to keep themselves safe. Okay, so it used to be that a cyberbullying incident happened, and the school would say, well, it happened off campus, there's nothing we can do about it. The courts are changing. That is changing. There's really no laws out there about that in particular. What it's based on is what this court decision said, so that if a school is taken to court because they expelled a student, what the lawyers do and what the judge does is look at how other judges made a decision, and they base their decision on that decision. Does that make any sense? So whenever there's an issue at a school, and a student is suspended, you have to make sure that there are these 4 things involved in the suspension. And I'm just kind of mentioning, this is kind of like for your information. The first one is if a student is suspended because of of something that happened in school, the speech, whether it's online speech or face-to-face speech, it has to be disruptive in some way that it disrupts the school. In this particular case is Tinker versus Des Moines. It was actually a landmark case that happened in Des Moines in 1969 where some kids came to school with black armbands on their arms to protest the Vietnamese War, and they were expelled from school because of that. And what the courts have decided is that students have free speech rights in school, that they cannot be expelled because of a political or some other belief. They have the right to free speech. So the speech has to be disruptive. It has to disrupt the school day. The speech has to be lewd or vulgar. In that particular case, a student was giving a graduation speech, and they were very lewd, and they alluded to vulgar acts. The student was suspended. So in that case, whatever the speech is, whether it's online, whether it's offline, it has to be disruptive enough to the school. It has to have evidence that it was lewd or vulgar for it to warrant a suspension. And then the Hazelwood case, that involved a school newsletter where a student interviewed kids who were children of divorce and printed their names and their comments about their parents' divorce. So the school-sponsored speech or activity, the Hazelwood case said that schools have the right to edit those comments if it's related to the school or it's a school activity like the school newsletter, and anymore those are all online. So students or schools have the ability to do that. The last one was any kind of speech, whether it's online or verbal in school, associated with illegal drug use. Schools can discipline because of that. So that just kind of gets to that stuff. Now, let me just go back one here. Make sure I got everything. Okay, I am moving on here to sexting. Sexting has just been a real issue in schools, starting as young as 4th and 5th grade. Kids are sending inappropriate photos. You know, 3rd grade, a lot of 2nd, 3rd grade kids have cell phones. They don't always know how to use the cell phones appropriately. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about. I'm going to show you a video. Now, I know the video, maybe, I don't know how well the videos work on your side, but remember, you can go to the Keystone website and have access to this presentation and play the video if it's something that you might find useful. So I'm just going to play the video, and hopefully it will appear on your side correctly. So in the best case scenario, the student does not send that image that her boyfriend requested her to send. But what if? What do you think will happen?
Oh man! Send that to me. Come on, send that to me.
of the most important things we can do is help kids understand that no matter what tool they're using, it's all digital, it can all be retrieved, and it can all be forwarded. So, dealing with sexting and texting issues. I'm just going to mention, I have a case here that let me just find the information on. So, sexting is sending of sexually explicit photos or text through one's mobile phone, or it could be on a website, to friends or potential girlfriends and boyfriends. And we know that adults don't have any better handle on this than students do. I'm sure you can think of adults who have ruined their political careers or embarrassed themselves, sports figures you can think of who embarrassed themselves because of the images that they've been sharing with other people. It happens here in Iowa, and I think one of the biggest things that kids don't realize that we need to make sure that they understand is that the sexting laws, they do not differentiate between whether you're a minor when you send it or whether you're an adult. So a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old girl who took a photo of herself and has it on her own phone could potentially become a registered sex offender because she possesses child pornography. The law does not differentiate between whether or not you created it. They just say you now have this on your device. Now, how does that work? Every case is handled by a district attorney, and every county has one, and they all kind of look at it a little bit differently. I know that states are working to understand and to change the law so that 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds don't end up becoming sex offenders. But let me tell you about a case here in Iowa. This happened a few years ago. And the case was decided in 2009, and I know they're working to change the laws, but the laws haven't changed yet. This was a student named Jorge, who was 18 years old. He attended high school with a 14-year-old female he had known for about a year, and they associated with a group of friends. Some of them were older than 14, some were younger, but Jorge happened to be 18 years old. During a phone call between Jorge and the girl said like 3 or 4 times, "Jorge, send me a picture of his physical anatomy," which Jorge did, finally, sent her that photo. It just happened that her father picked up the phone and saw the photo and called the police. So Jorge was arrested. The jury found Jorge guilty of knowingly disseminating obscene material to a minor. The court granted Jorge a deferred judgment. They put him on probation so he didn't have to serve any time in jail. They fined him $250, but they also required him to register as a sex offender. So I don't know if you know what it means to be a registered sex offender. It means it can determine where you live. Every time you go to apply for a job, you have to put on the job application that you're a registered sex offender. I mean, they don't understand. People might not understand that the reason you're a sex offender was because you sent a picture to a 14-year-old girl, as compared to you're a sex offender because you physically abused your daughter or your grandchildren or something. I mean, there's a huge disparity there, and the law hasn't caught up with what kids are doing. That's why it's so important for kids to understand the potential consequences that can happen with this kind of thing. Okay, so all of you who are parents, I know that this may not be part of the paraeducation, but when you go home tonight, take your kid's cell phone and look at all the photos they have on their cameras and talk to them about this issue, because it can ruin a life forever. Once you become a registered sex offender, you cannot, in Iowa at least, you can't even appeal that lawsuit or that ruling for 10 years. So yeah, it's a huge thing. There are a lot of alternatives to actually sending text to kids. So maybe you are a coach and you want to send text messages to your students, to the kids, telling them practice has changed or something. That is also a huge issue, because then you have middle school, high school kids who now have your cell phone. I think as educators, we really need to think about who we're sharing our cell phones with. Think about the girl who maybe doesn't understand the relationship with her coach and inadvertently or sends things that could be taken the wrong way. I had another teacher tell me her husband's a coach, and he now has girls, volleyball girls, that he shared his cell phone with, texting him at 11 at midnight at night because, you know, they just think that's how life is. So you have to really think about texting students and dealing with those issues. There are some great alternatives. Edmodo has a way, and both Schoology have a way that you can text students through Edmodo without putting your own cell phone out there. Selly, Remind 101 are some great choices as well. I'm just going to go back a little bit. I'm going to tell you one more story that happened and then ask you a question if you know what to do. Okay, so this particular, dealing with sexting with students. Now remember, I've had cases of fourth grade girls sending photos to 4th and 5th grade boys of themselves without a top on. I don't know why they do that, but, you know, kids, they are always experimenting and trying new things. So let me tell you this story. This was a principal in this particular case, and then we'll have a little discussion about this. The principal, he was the assistant principal in a school in Virginia, and another student had told him that there was another student in the class who had a photo of a partially nude girl on his cell phone. So the principal went and talked to the student and said, okay, let me see your cell phone. And this was a couple years ago. He didn't know how to deal with it. So he said, you know, email this photo to me so I have evidence of it. And so the principal and the assistant principal, they're dealing with this case, and they had the photo on their cell phone to preserve it as evidence, never thinking that it could be used against them. A couple of weeks later, this same boy got in trouble. He pulled down a girl's pants in class, and so the principal called the mother. The mother was there. She was really mad. During the course of that incident, the principal mentioned the sexting incident and said that he had had the kids email the cell phone or the image, so he had it as evidence. And the mother, you know, got really upset and said, fine, I will see you in court. And that's exactly what she did. She called the local sheriff, who showed up at school to investigate, saw the photo. Of course, you know, they have to investigate. They don't know how that photo got there. And the principal was arrested at school and taken away, you know, which, great. So he was arrested, escorted to jail. The story was in the local news, TV, you know, all that kind of stuff. After 7 months going through the court system, the case was finally thrown out after he got a chance to explain the whole situation. However, his legal expenses were over $167,000. So the question here is, if something like this happens, how do you deal with it? So say somebody comes up to you and says, Johnny has a photo of a nude girl on his cell phone. What do you do? Talk about it at your site.
I've never come across that one.
I hope I never do.
Yeah, send it to the top.
And I know some of you are probably saying, well, I'm kindergarten and I'm pre-K. You know, in a case like that, I'm hoping it would just be an innocent thing that somebody would do. But honestly, never say never. You never know what kids are up to. I guess my suggestion, the most recent guidance that we have on what to do in a case like this, not only to protect the student, to protect the victim, the kid who's in the photo, and to protect yourself, is to take the student and the photo into the office, get the principal. Part of your acceptable use policy should have some information about you will be confiscating student devices if there's something inappropriate on them, and then have the secretary put the phone in a locked someplace where you can store it where no one else can get to it. And then the school has to make the decision about the issue whether or not to call the police. So in a case like this, you want to be very careful about how you handle it. You also may want to document it. You may want to get another teacher to go with you so that you have someone else who can document the story about what was said and who said what and what was on the phone and so on. I would not suggest having the student email it, send it to you, forward it to you. Don't do that. That is my best advice today. The way these things go, sometimes they change. If your school has a different policy, it is important that you know what that policy is. Generally, that's what most schools that I know of, that's how they've been handling it. You take it into luckily, you won't be the one that will have to deal with it. You may have to say, this is what I saw and this is what happened, but it will be the principal, the guidance counselor, and possibly law enforcement who will have to deal with the issue. But you want to make sure that you protect yourself as well as the students. And again, remember now, don't go on Facebook and say, oh, you know what happened at school today? Remember, all of that stuff is very sensitive. So you want to protect yourself and students that way. Okay, so alternatives to texting. So I'm going to start wrapping this up. I know you would probably feel bad if we ended early, but according to my clock, I think I have 5:25. Is that the time you have too? So I'm going to kind of wrap it up, and I'm going to give you an activity that I'd like you to try on your side in just a few minutes. And to wrap up, limit student access to whatever your sites are. Facebook, Pinterest, are they going to follow you on Pinterest? I would say unless it's a site that's only going to be used at school, if it's anything personal, you don't want students to have access to it. And even as an educator, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, you want to be really careful about what you say. It's not like you can say anything that people who are non-educators can say. A non-educator can criticize the school, and that's part of their free speech. An educator criticizing the school, that can cause a disruption to the school. So the same words can be viewed differently if they're coming from a school employee rather than if they're coming from someone in the public. So keep that in mind. Never ever discuss students or colleagues. If you're using a site for instructional purposes, make sure that parents know about it, that you send a letter home. So maybe you're the cheerleading advisor, and you created a website that you want the cheerleaders to have access to. Make sure you invite the parents to join. If you're using Twitter and you're tweeting the cheerleaders that practice has changed, make sure you include the parents in that tweet. So you want to make sure you're inclusive and you're making sure that the teachers that you work with and the principal at the school knows what's going on. Do not ask to be a student's best friend on their site. Do not ask to be part of a student's Twitter account. Monitor your own site regularly and remove things that are inappropriate. So did I mention revenge porn? I think I mentioned revenge porn as your vocabulary word. And photos that you're posting, once they're out there, you cannot get rid of them. And the other vocabulary word I think I mentioned to you today was sextortion. And what's happening is on a site, and we've had this happen in Northeast Iowa. There was a huge one also just in Milwaukee where some kids on Facebook, somebody was contacting them and asking for them to post an inappropriate photo about themselves. And then once they did, as soon as they posted that, they said, okay, now you have to keep sending me photos or I'm going to tell your parents what you did. So, and we had a case just like this in Northeast Iowa where a girl sent a photo to somebody, and as soon as they have that one, then they start using it. They start using it to extort or sextort kids to get more photos. Make sure that kids know that they can come and talk to you and it can be stopped. But once those photos are out there, you just can't get them down. Now I'm going to talk about digital footprint in a minute. Think about that photo that's out there and how hard it is to get it down, and then I'll talk about that in a second too. But keep an eye on your site. Keep an eye on the photos that are out there. Help kids to understand every time you go to a site and kids are uploading a photo, you can say something like, every time I upload a photo, I think, is it appropriate or not? So you're helping kids, you're modeling that good behavior, and you're helping kids understand every time they put something out there, what it says about themselves. Google yourself. We're going to do that in a second. And remember, as an educator, as a para, don't access sites, non-school sites with school equipment on school time or with school resources. Now, this quick example I'm going to tell you, a teacher was telling me about this, and this has to do with Snapchat and her niece. So, and this has happened at schools as well. Her niece was a lifeguard last summer at a pool, and during her work hours, she took a photo with Snapchat and sent it to her friend. Somehow, her boss found out about it, and she was fired. The photo was not inappropriate, but she was doing this when she was supposed to be on the job as a lifeguard, and it works the same at school. You have a job to be an educator. You need to be careful about what sites you're going to that can be considered inappropriate to be used during work time. So I'm just going to throw that out there, something you need to think about. Okay, let's talk about digital footprint, and then we're going to wrap this up. So your digital footprint are all those little pieces of digital information that you've posted about yourself. Think about the new mom that has a baby, and the baby's a couple hours old, and they post a photo of the new baby on Facebook. Now, remember ice cream? Ice cream is good. Ice cream could be bad. So she's sharing those photos of her newborn baby after it's 2 hours old. That 2-hour-old baby, though, now has the start of a digital footprint. It's the trail. Your digital footprint is the trail of all those pieces of information that you've posted over time about yourself. Now think about that baby who's 2 months old. There are more photos. The baby gets a little bit older. The baby is 4 or 5, and she starts posting some of her own things online. The baby gets a little bit older. She's now in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, and she starts posting more information online. Some of it may be really, really good stuff. Assignments, things she's doing at school. Some of it may be inappropriate. She gets to be a junior or senior in high school. She goes to a party. She posts photos of her and her friends drinking, partying. And now it's time for her to get a job. It's time for her to apply for scholarships. When those potential employers or when those managers look at a resume, one of the first things they do, and I just read a thing about this recently, 80% of employers, the first thing they do is Google you. Before they get your cover letter, they Google you. They look and see what they find on Google. If it's inappropriate, if there are things that they see that are red flags to them, you will not even get an interview and you won't even know why. Sometimes there are people out there who have the same name as you. And I'm going to just mention that case. This particular one, it was a student named Pete Kistler. He had a GPA of 3.9. He was a senior in college, and he was trying to get a summer internship. And like I said, he had a great GPA. He sent out all these resumes. He didn't get a single response. And he's like, what the heck? You know, I have a great resume. I'm doing all these great things. A friend called him and said, well, when we Googled your name, there's another Pete Kistler out there who's a drug dealer. And when we Googled it, that's what we saw. We didn't see your stuff. We saw his stuff. Even though it's the same name, some employers will not dig enough to realize that's not you. So what do you do in a case like that? Once those photos are out there, you can't take it down. A couple of suggestions are, make sure that when you're posting things, if there's someone with the same name, always include your middle name. Or always include your middle initial to differentiate yourself. There are websites that you can hire, and that's what this Pete Kistler created, a website called, what is it called? Brand You. It's called Brand You. And he helps people who are in the same situation. What you have to do is flood the internet with positive stuff to make the stuff that's already out there drop down to the bottom of the list, if that makes sense. So you can't take it away from the web, but you can put newer stuff out there so that when people do a search, the newer stuff rises to the top, the older stuff drops down. So that's how they fix their issue. So as we're working with students, with pre-K students, with kindergarten students, with middle school and high school, we need to start helping them understand what digital footprint is, how it can affect their life, and think about what they're posting. You know, this is kind of a new thing in the history of humans. We haven't had the internet around that long. In fact, this week is the 25th anniversary of the internet, if you can imagine that. But the students who are growing up now, they're growing up digital. They're growing up posting stuff at 4 and 5, 6 years old. They need to be aware of the potential consequences of the information they're putting out there. On the one hand, it could be good ice cream. It could be really good stuff they're posting. On the other hand, it could be the reason why they're not getting the job they want. Because they're posting those inappropriate photos, or they're posting too much partying information, or whatever it is. But it's our responsibility to start in pre-K, to start in kindergarten, to start at the elementary, and make sure that they understand what they're doing and the choices that they're making. I mean, no, you know, we can't tie their hands, but I think a lot of kids just don't have a clue. They don't know what they're doing could have potential consequences. So, okay, I'm moving on. And what I want you to do right now is, with one of your devices, either get a new tab, or if you're using your iPad, open up Safari and Google yourself. Go to Google, put in your name, and see what shows up. So just do a general Google search. And I'm going to just exit out of this for a minute and get a new Google page. And put in, did you find your, I'm going to put in my name so you can see what shows up. Notice images. You know when you do a Google search under web? See, here I am on Twitter. I mean, I have a pretty high profile because I post stuff all the time. And some of you may or may not, but you may have a Pinterest account that shows up. Now click on images. You know, in Google, I'm going to blow this up a little bit. Maybe I'm going to blow this up. You know where the image link is? Click on images and see what kind of images show up. If you have anything out there, do you see you anywhere? This is a horrible one of me. How can I get rid of it? Have a discussion about what you see.
Not me, but I found John Patrick.
My bad.
You know, anymore, people are pretty good about using those privacy settings in Facebook and other sites. But just remember, every now and then, Facebook changes things and they open that up, so you got to keep an eye on it. Another search that you can try, I'm going to go back to is use, do a people search, P-I-P-L. So if you put in Google P-I-P-L, it's called people search, and then put your name in that and see what you find. Or put your son or daughter's name in there. See what you find about them. Not that I'm encouraging you to stalk your kids. I'm not saying that. Yeah, P-I-P-L is a people search. Put your name in there and see what you find. So just do a Google search first of all for P-I-P-L. Either try, see, I see my Pinterest account too that I deleted. I even deleted that account. It's showing up. So see what you see about yourself. Or someone else who has the same name as you that's doing something inappropriate. That's important knowledge to have too. And then have a discussion about what you see.
It tells me I have to get ready to go didn't think I was that bad. My Pinterest tells my age.
Mhm. Yep. So in here, we're seeing our age is public knowledge. Sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's bad.
Twitter. There's no Pac-Man and Billings, Montana. Raytown, Missouri. Interlochen, Florida. Interlochen Lane, Allen, Florida. There's a Patricia in Topeka, Kansas. There's a lot of us. Okay.
So I hope you're finding really positive stuff. But the internet's not going to go away, so we need to help our students understand what their digital footprint is and help them to keep track of it, keep a handle on it.
Understand?
Spot, I think.
Well,
So I'm going to mention the resources. I'm going to ask you to post one thing in the chat, and then we're going to wrap this up. As I end this session, I just want to mention that every teacher and every para at a school is responsible for teaching kids appropriate behavior, whether that's social interaction face-to-face or whether it's digital interaction online. We are all responsible for helping our students to learn appropriate behavior. We're also responsible for all those other things, but that's part of our job as well. And it can be fairly easy as modeling and just reminding kids what is appropriate and what isn't. So I'm going to get out of this presentation, go back to the Keystone website, and show you where the resources can be found. So if you are on the Keystone website, on the page for paraeducators, in the classes for paras, on either whether you're taking it for certification or not, if you scroll down to today's session, there'll be 4 links. The first one is just a link to Keystone's Digital Citizenship and Cyberbullying Resources. If you click on that first link, let me blow this up so you can see it a little bit better. This one, I'm just going to go up to my tabs. I already have it up here as a tab. This is where it will take you. And all that is on the Keystone site under School Technology, just go down to Digital Citizenship and Cyberbullying. The first thing that you're going to see here is the presentation, the exact presentation that I showed you today. And all you have to do is click the arrow in the middle of the screen, and it will take you step by step through all the slides. So if there was anything that you wanted to go back and look at, it's all right there. For example, that photo that I showed you of the passwords are like underwear, if you wanted to show that to your students, you can get it here. You just click through the slides. In addition, there are other resources down here at the bottom that you may or may not need. But you can tell teachers about them as well if they don't know about it. Oh, and here it says, something went wrong. It should work. I'll look at it and see why it doesn't work. Maybe I have to update my Flash for this browser. But the presentation should be right here. What I'll do is I'll also post a link right underneath so you have a link as well as embedded so that you can get access to it. The next link that I shared with you is my Pinterest. my Bullying and Digital Citizenship Pinterest board. If you're in Pinterest, feel free to follow that board or go there and find some great tools. I spend way too much time on Pinterest, as my husband would tell you. I need to set a timer and get away from some of that screen time. The resource after that was the one I shared with you, 20 tips for classroom management. Remember, it says laptops, but just substitute that for devices. There are lots of tips there for how to kind of manage kids with their devices. And then the last one was that poster, 5 Steps to Internet Safety. And again, if you don't have access to that and can't download it, email me, and I'll put my email in the chat, and I will send it to you on the van. Now, in the chat, we have about 15 minutes left. This is the last thing I'd like you to do. In the chat, what I'd like you to do is post one new thing you learned today. So hopefully you've learned at least one thing new. You probably are overwhelmed with information, but hopefully there is at least one thing that you can remember from the session. Post one new thing in the chat. If you have any questions, also post those in the chat or email me if you have a question, you want more information. And then we're done today. It looks too nice out. Finally. Oh, one more thing I need to mention before you leave. Glenda is going to email you a link for feedback for the session. You have to respond to that link within 7 days. After 7 days, it's no longer active. I just know that we will look at your comments. We take your comments very seriously and do everything we can to do the best job that we can for you. Those comments, the comments that you post in there, will be used as part of my evaluation for my job performance. So anything you put in there, my supervisor will also see. I appreciate that you took the time to come today, and thank you for putting up with technology as it works. I hope the sound got better for you, or maybe there's something we can do to make it better. And thanks again. I hope you have a great night. Enjoy what's left of the weather. Oh, I see. Deb says there are tons of Deb Thomases. I bet. There are a lot of Debs out there. I'm just looking through your questions your comments in the chat.
I guess just the information that's out there is just
It's
amazing.
overwhelming. I didn't realize there were that many different sites for
Yeah,
LC1 students.
search people.
Unless you have any questions, well, I'm just keeping an eye on your comments. I'm going to stop the recording in just a little bit. I'm not sure where the recording is posted, but each of these sessions are recorded. If you, for whatever reason, need to go back and view it, maybe they're posted on the Paris site. I'm not sure.
I think we just click on webinar.
Oh.
Where it says webinar, I think that it shows up.
Okay, so they're saying here that
How to see, how to hear.
in order to find this site again, you just click on the webinar link and you will be able to see the recording of it.
Never tried that. Have you done that? Mm-hmm. I did the last time.
Oh, that's right.
Well, I had to for 2 of them.
Yes, you did.
So, thank you for your comments. Have a great night. I'm going to stop the recording. Bye, everybody.